Welcome back to the channel, guys. Spooky season is descending upon us right now as I speak, as you watch this video, and that's why I'm here to give you 5 horror films I really recommend. Horror films I think you, all your friends probably haven't seen or heard of before, and I emphasize probably. You know, maybe a few of you have heard of some of these films if you're a real film enthusiast, but I'm picking films that I think have really gone under the radar in the mainstream film world, where your family and friends probably haven't really heard of these films, much less watched them. I'm not going to present these in any order. I'm just going to kind of go off of rapid fire, so let's get into it right now. Number 1, Mad God. Mad God is a stop-motion horror film that's been in production for over 30 years from filmmaker Phil Tippett, who's done special effects work for Star Wars and Jurassic Park, just to name a few. And yes, having come from a special effects stop-motion background, this is a film that I know he has really been passionate about making. He took over 30 years to really film this thing, trying to find time and resources and money, and it finally released a few years ago in 2021. I have to say, if you really want a trip, this is the film to watch. It's a hellish landscape of a film, both in visuals and texture and the creature designs and narrative. On top of that, it's probably one of the most original creative films you'll probably ever seen. You've never seen anything like it, and I think it really shows the strength of the stop motion medium, that like, hey, this is the medium you can really tell stories in that you probably can't do it in other mediums like live action or CG. Number 2, Spider Baby. Spider Baby features Lon Chaney as well as a young Sid Haig in a story about an inbred Southern family, last generation, who are getting scammed out of money from our distant relatives. It is definitely a very unsettling film, in terms of narrative and atmosphere as well. But it's also kind of a cool precursor to the films like Devil's Rejects, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hills Have Eyes, just to name a few. This very kind of growing subgenre of a hillbilly redneck horror, I don't know what else to call it, and done in a more realistic manner, as well as with a Southern Gothic sense of style. If you're a fan of any of those films I mentioned, I do think Spider Baby is definitely worth to watch. Number 3, Cure. Cure, I'd say leans a little bit more into crime thriller territory, but there's definitely a lot of elements, both in narrative and visuals, that make this a horror film. Not just myself, but many others as well. But Cure takes place in Japan. It focuses on a detective who is investigating a string of bizarre murders with a lot of bizarre connections that may even seem like coincidences on the surface. And as he's investigating these murders, he's starting to lose his own sanity. Of all the films on this list, I have to say Cure is probably the most well-directed of these films. Both through narrative and the visual storytelling, the film really creates this sense of dread and hopelessness in the best way possible that you would want in your horror film. Through the narrative, you're never going to guess what's going to happen, because this film really does throw curveballs at you and twists. It really, through an unreliable narrator of the detective, right, his perspective that we're going through, you're always going to be second guessing about what you're seeing is true, or what you saw 10 minutes ago in the film was true and real. So that's why I think Cure is a must-watch horror film. Hell, it's not even a film that you should watch on Halloween. You should really just watch this film anytime, as soon as possible, because it probably definitely is one of the best films in the late 20th century, honestly. Number 4, Cronos. Guillermo del Toro's first feature film. He's done films recently like Netflix's Pinocchio, Shape of Water, Pan's Labyrinth, just to name a few. And Cronos does what Guillermo del Toro's other films do a lot of the time, which is to take the dark, fantastical, and try to normalize it, or make sympathetic light out of it. And in this case, it's about a grandfather who's taking care of his granddaughter. It's a very close, warm relationship. That is until the grandfather turns into a vampire. And even in spite of all of that, in spite of all the horror that comes with that, this grandfather still wants to take care of his granddaughter, even though there are antagonistic forces that are trying to get in the way of that. Great vampire film, but it's also very heartfelt and endearing, tugs at your heartstrings. I'd say, yeah, this is definitely a film to watch, especially if you're a fan of Guillermo del Toro. If you're a fan of Guillermo del Toro and you still haven't seen Cronos, I don't know what you're doing. Speaking of vampires, we have Near Dark at number 5. Near Dark is a vampire film directed by Kathryn Bigelow. It also stars Bill Paxton, Lance Henriksen, as well as Jeanette Goldstein, all of which were in past Kathryn Bigelow or James Cameron films. It's a punk rock vampire film done in the style of a Kathryn Bigelow action film, which, if that doesn't sell you, I don't know what will. But on top of that, I think the film was very visually, stylistically well directed, like a lot of Kathryn Bigelow's early filmography. As well as a great cast of characters that you're always going to feel very invested in. Even the antagonistic vampires in this film are are kind of charismatic, very interesting and compelling in their own ways, both in their performances and the way the script is written. And then, with that, great action sequences as well, and cool gore effects on the cherry on top. I think Near Dark is the whole package for a vampire film. I think it's great for the Halloween season. So that's my list of my 5 films I recommend you guys watching, films that you or your friends probably haven't seen or heard of. Let me ask you this, guys. Any of those films pique your interest, or have you seen any of these films already? Hit the like button, hit subscribe. I'll see you next time, and happy Halloween.